Welcome to Classic Game Room, coming to you from the Intergalactic Space Arcade, under construction, as you can see. Didn't feel a thing. This is the review of the 2009 BIONIC COMMANDO. Nope, nothing. I know there's something I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm just gonna keep throwing bodies at this Pepsi sign until it dispenses Pepsi. Come on, I'm thirsty. It's BIONIC COMMANDO. Swing into action once again as Nathan Red Spencer, who's got a super cool bionic arm but never learned to swim. It turns out to be his undoing time and time again. This is the 2009 BIONIC COMMANDO being played here on the PlayStation 3, not to be confused with the 1988 BIONIC COMMANDO for the Nintendo Entertainment System. This is like a 3D-ish spiritual successor or sequel that takes the 2D BIONIC COMMANDO gameplay and turns it into this. Sometimes it works out pretty well, other times it's just downright sloppy and awkward. Yay, I got a collectible. Can I download a new Faith No More cassette? Well, it's not nearly as interesting as the 1988 BIONIC COMMANDO for the NES, which was actually based on the 1987 Capcom arcade machine. I think you might enjoy this version of BIONIC COMMANDO if you give the game a chance. It takes a while to get into it. In fact, it took me several years. I love the NES game. It's one of my favorites from the era, and I remember beating it back in the day and took a picture of the signature at the end and mailed it to Nintendo Power, who never printed my picture, so screw you, Nintendo Power. My point being, for many of us, this game had a lot to live up to. Maybe too much to live up to, because it's immediately unimpressive. Until you get the hang of the controls. There's a lot to like here, but it's not exactly a shooter, and it's not exactly like BIONIC COMMANDO. Kind of a hybrid of the two. Obviously, the bionic arm is the star of the game, unless you count Nathan Spencer as the star of the game, who is brilliantly voiced by Mike Patton, the lead singer of Faith No More and Mr. Bungle, teaching us that love is not a fist, it's a giant bionic arm with a clampy thing on the end of it.
You'll thank me for that one day!
That's right, kids, it's time to make some enemies redundant. There's many nods to the original, and the music is frequently very good as well. The game is compartmentalized, like the NES game. You play through levels, some of which have more swinging, others are more shooting, and then there's boss battles. Conveniently, there's always lots of things to swing on, kind of like Jersey barriers in Gears of War. Why are there so many? It's not that I'm mad, I'm just disappointed that there's not more BIONIC COMMANDO games, because this one clearly leaves room for improvement, but it's BIONIC COMMANDO and it's still cool. The fundamentals work pretty well once you get used to them.
Our last defense, but the higher-ups scrapped it during the purge.
Do you mean it's bionic?
Your comprehension is not necessary to complete this mission. Just get me that device.
Joe, I got something. Some kind of code.
It's probably an access code used by BioRain called a Matrix. Maybe you can open some of their locked doors now.
Since when could Nathan Red Spencer jump? I mean, that was like the whole thing with the original and the bionic arm. You couldn't jump, so you had to swing to get places. At least you can use your bionic arm to do other things like pick up cars and throw them. You just gotta play for a few hours until you get that skill. I'll give Capcom and Grin some credit for trying something different with this game. They took an ambitious approach, and it may or may not have paid off for them. This can be easily found these days in the bargain bin, or you can download it cheaply from Steam for your PC. I feel like the industry's been getting away from big budget games like this, games that aren't a sure bet, and BIONIC COMMANDO is not a sure bet. There's no guarantee you're gonna like this. The controls are strange, the atmosphere is kind of weird, and the story is uninspired, but it has Mike Patton, and that's always a good thing.
Sucks to be you!
Even though most of the levels are kind of bland and all look the same, this is the kind of game that gets better the more that you play it. I think once I came to a realization my most powerful weapon was picking up enemy soldiers and throwing them at each other, the game seemed to make more sense. But you gotta remember it's BIONIC Commando, not a shooter, so you either learn to swing and hurl enemies at each other, or you fall to your doom and then respawn at the beginning of the level.